from Katong to Gunjur. Most of the women living there have been in the narco/horticulture business, paying tuition for their kids, taking their kids to hospitals, and making sure that they help in their household in terms of adding to the economic buoyancy of their households. What has happened? Their lands are being confiscated. What has happened? The little fish they used to get and make dry bonga and others is no longer happening because the Chinese are buying it. Should I blame the Chinese? My answer is no. Because in life, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. The government of the Gambia, the public officials serving the Gambia, has sold short the Gambian by making sure that the Chinese come to Gambia and exploit our marine resources unabated. That is wrong, and it's an atrocious, foul, something that this government must try and stop. And stopping it starts with fixing the Department of Fisheries.
Do you think there is any intention to address the issue of these fish meal factories in the country?
Well, there is what you call conscience. There's what you call courage of conviction. The public servants, starting with the Minister of Fisheries, should not wait for the public outcry to fix it. Why? 1 ton of finished fish meal takes in 4 tons of raw fish. The rate of exploitation will soon get Gambia to a depletion stage. That's one. The poor man in Gambia relies on kobo/bonga or yaboy for their source of protein because they cannot afford even chicken legs. Today, they are competing with the Chinese fish meals. And not only that, the Chinese fish meal own boats. These boats are now coming into our 9 nautical mile, which is an exclusive no-fish zone for fishing trawlers. And guess what? The artisanal fishermen who were fishing there so you and I can buy fish no longer have fish. Their lives are in danger because they've been doused with petrol. Their nets are being cut, and you are buying fish at an exorbitant price. So society is losing no matter what. And any sensible government with conviction and conscience will know that fish meal factories are not good for our environment, are not good for our socio-economic configuration, i.e. the society and households being able to buy fish. Today you go to Tanje, you are poor, you cannot get fish.
And it's tragic that a young life was lost in Sanyang few weeks ago. And even with that, the Chinese ambassador in Gambia issued a statement condemning the attack on the Chinese fish meal factory in Sanyang. And some Gambians took offense by the fact that this guy was out there with everything that is happening in the coast. These people are saying, you are affecting our livelihoods. You are affecting where we earn. You are affecting where we get our meals from. Someone died, and yet still you stand there trying to condemn us. And I saw a comment on social media where someone said, this is the part where the foreign minister should sit him down and have a dialogue. What do you think?
Not a dialogue, but a reprimand. He needs to be reprimanded. Why? See, I don't blame the Chinese ambassador. You get away with murder if you're allowed to get away with murder. That's one. A beggar has no choice. And this is the mentality we need to stop. Gambia as a nation have turned ourselves to a beggar nation. So basically, kila joh mola mom. And this is the problem this government finds itself with the Chinese authorities. We rely on them for aid. But what the Chinese authority or ambassador has done needs a rebuke from the foreign minister, number one. Number two, I think it was an insult to our plight as Gambians and what we are going through. In China, you cannot cut a tree. It's illegal. Yet still, they're flying, going all around the world, buying trees, cutting down other people's forests. But I don't blame the Chinese. I blame us. When will Gambia have leaders who are not transactional, have leaders who have vision, think of country, and think of instilling pride and dignity to our Gambianness? Today, our Gambianness has been bruised because we have cheap leaders who think of what they want rather than what is good for us. A people without dignity are people not worth living. And we have been brought down to a level where our dignity has been bruised by few at the expense of all.
With all of these things happening, how does this affect how does it impact our economy? Because recently we've had the drug issue, still not addressed. We don't know what's happening. How does this impact the economy? Because we have investors sitting out there saying, oh, okay, that's a drug country or something of that sort. It could be good, it could be bad. Oh, that's a drug country. Okay, then let's go in and also try our chance. Or that's a country that's not safe, so I'm not going there to invest. How does this impact the economy of the country?
You see, justice must be swift if it's to be seen as working. When the youths of Sanyang burned the police station, in less than a week, people were arraigned in court. This is not the first drug bust over the past 36 to 48 months at the port. And we're yet to see anything tangible or meaningful come out of it, especially this last bust of over a ton of cocaine. It is scary and it's a shame. So now, the image of this country has been put in disrepute. How? Gambia is not a narco state, but it is fast becoming or being seen as a narco state. What does that mean? It's a soft target for cartels. They think they can come here, do business because they will have protection, or people will turn a blind eye and allow them to do what they want to do. And that is not good for our economy because it means you will have social unrest. Because imagine 2-3 cartels wanting to use Gambia, there will be tough wars.
Right.
People will be fighting for territory. And at the end, when 2 elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. And that's the average Gambian. That's one. The residual value of the cocaine that stays here will also have an adverse social impact on society. So government must be very mindful to have a zero tolerance on such a thing. And I think our government need to do better. And silence is a form of consent. And we haven't seen them come outright, not only to denounce, but put meaningful measures to get this thing sorted. If you look at the courts, how can you try someone in absentia? Number one, they say they don't know where he is, and now people are saying if the government doesn't come, the judge must drop the case. What a shame. When we're talking about tons, millions of dollars, are we serious? Do we take our Gambianness and our country seriously? And it's all about leadership. Leadership is by example, and the example is not good as it is.
Now let's talk about corruption, cancer of African nations. And I think Gambia is now tapping into the World Bank to help them fight corruption. What do you make of this headline? Government seeks World Bank's help to fight corruption. Why do we have to seek help from the World Bank
Balanga
to fight
sangu nga
corruption?
set. Balanga ote sangu. Dafa wara feka nga set. You want help. Ask yourself. You see, we have to be introspective. We have to look at self. And let us be honest with each other. This is playing with the gallery. This is good for a headline. But Gambians are not stupid. We know that in Gambia, our procurement rules are so poor. We have seen at the IEC, we have seen the Banjul Road, we have seen the Nyomi Hakalang, and many others, to name a few. What is the problem? The problem is we Gambians, collectively, both the people in the public sector and the private sector, are not ready to change. Why? We need to deconstruct our social construct. Njegi Guru is legalized in the Gambian mindset. Njegi Attire is legalized in the Gambian mindset to the point any checkpoint you stop, the police officer will ask. And whether it's a minister or a PS or a high ranking, they expect something in return too. So it's just not the police officer or the rank and file on the bottom. The fish rots from the top. And we need to accept that if we want to change this country. We don't need the World Bank to help us fight corruption. We need serious attempts with our leadership to say we have zero tolerance, starting with ourselves. You have to self-regulate before you call a regulator to regulate you, and that's what is lacking in our country.
Perhaps a case that I think Gambians have quickly forgotten is the Dr. Banja case at the Ministry of Fisheries and Water Resources. Yeah. It has gone dead. Nobody has heard anything from that. Investigations were being done by the police, and the last update they gave, and that was it. What did you expect government to do with that kind of situation?
That is just one out of many. Since I've known myself, I'm yet to see this government try someone for corruption, even though even the blind people in this country know that corruption is rife and it's a way of life. But the government is not serious about it, because when you're serious about it, you make examples. But why and how is it not possible for government to make examples? Because he who is without sin must cast the first stone. So you cannot punish him when you yourself may be a culprit. So therefore, we need leaders who are busters, and they're going to come and disrupt this corruption culture that we have in this country.
And now, out of nowhere, Nawek came out and said, oh, someone took 15 million from us. Just like that. What's your analysis of this, and what are the possibilities?
Well, there's two sides to a story. Nawek, as a depositor into any bank in the country, have the right to put monies in there. Now is the responsibility and duty of care of the bank to have safe systems and security measures to make sure that those accounts that are with their banks having deposits of corporates and private individuals are safe. So if the monies have been gotten not on Nawek's permission, but through using the vulnerabilities of the bank financial system, then the responsibility falls with the bank. If someone were to steal a checkbook from the bank, from Nawek, or happen to have the passwords and transfer monies, then that's Nawek's problem. And I don't know of these two what have happened. So all I can say is it's time for the Central Bank of the Gambia to do more banking supervision and see whether the security standards and softwares being used by the banks are in conformity with global standards to fight hacking. If that's the case, we are safe. If not, we have a problem. But hacking dollars is very difficult because it's lump sum. Unless you want to hack it, make a transfer within the bank in dollars and ship it somewhere. So I don't know what has happened, but I'm still waiting to see what has really gone wrong.
We don't really know, but it seems they are already investigating, and reports are out there that one person has been arrested. I cannot independently verify this, and then some Gambians are just saying, well, you're just using him as a scapegoat. And
well, like I said, there's two sides to it. Either an in-house within Nawek who helped facilitated this, or a rogue hacker who realized the vulnerabilities of our banking system, went dark in the dark internet, and just did whatever that they've done. So that's why the central bank must also be actively involved and be vigilant, because banking supervision is not only about making sure that the deposit ratio of banks are fine, but making sure that the systems are not vulnerable to what we see in the global space, especially in the dark internet.
Right. Technology has really advanced, and I think Gambia still needs to catch up. We've seen recently when we had 2 major internet outages of this country. For someone who's an economist, knowing that this economy is digitally driven, what was your reaction to that?
You see, in any country, the Minister of Telecom should have been called to the parliament or be sacked by the government for having 2 intermittent interruptions in less than 45 days. Why? Any country in this world today relies on the internet for service, trade, and many other things, especially financial intermediation. So when the internet was out, anyone who wanted to travel cannot travel because a ticket can't be issued to you. You have an ATM card, you cannot use your ATM to pay for a service, because everything is on the internet. But 2 things have happened. In the Gambia, the Minister of Telecommunication and Communication, whatever it's called, they have focused on being a spin doctor for the government rather than working and focusing more on the telco side of it, because it's the telco side of it that is more important. The world is moving to a digitally driven economy, and the investment we have done as a country is so much, and we are the only country in the world without an adequate backup or redundancy plan as it relates to internet. A few days ago, the Gamtel fiber went down less than a week ago. Why? Because they're routing through Senegal. I don't know whether their ACE cable is up or not. But what needs to happen, this country needs to take internet connectivity seriously by making sure that prices are affordable, by making sure quality of service is high. And the only way that can happen is for the government to impose through PURA what you call a service level agreement. Meaning when there is a downtime, you pay people for having a downtime. And you're not paying them for what they're paying you, but you pay them for damages caused to their businesses. That way, companies will make sure they have an adequate, viable redundancy or backup plans.
And sometimes we tend to blame the service providers, the GSM companies, forgetting that there is a regulatory body, which is PURA. What do you make of PURA's responsibility? Because a lot of Gambians say that they are regulating everything but the GSM companies and the things they are supposed to regulate. We've seen recently when they came out to say, okay, we are going to keep an eye on radio stations. When you use language that you're not supposed to use, we are going to, apply some measures on you. What do you think of them as a regulatory body?
You see, regulation is good, but it has a scope. PURA has transformed itself into a supra-regulatory agency. Gas, they're involved. Petroleum filling stations, petrol stations, they're involved. Radio stations, they're involved. Water, they're involved. Electricity, they're involved. Telecommunication, they're involved. It's all well and good, but do they have the requisite skill set and toolkit to make sure these things happen? I think the answer is no. So where should their focus be? The telecommunication, which forms a big aspect of the Gambian life, both in terms of revenue and need for services. Today, the quality of service in the telcos are bad, the call drop rates are high, the quality of internet service provision is bad, no backup or redundancy plans that are adequate, and yet still you're going after other people, i.e. the people in the petrol business, the people in the gas business, that's butane gas, the bottled gas. So it's time PURA takes a focus and relook and make sure they go back to what PURA was supposed to do in its inception. Then that way society will benefit from PURA. But if PURA is looking at regulatory revenue, they will like to broaden their scope, meaning whoever they're giving a license, you pay. So they will even want to give a license to the bonga seller. And that's where we're heading, because they're expanding their scope and they're expanding their regulatory footprint day in, day out, and that's not good for the country.
And finally, before I let you go, something that every Gambian, the average one, the rich ones, everyone is concerned about: the skyrocketing of items, the prices of items in the market. Ridiculous. What's happening as far as economics is concerned? What is this all about?
Simple. When you have an inefficient market, the outcome is you don't have price stability. When you don't have price stability, you have prices moving up. So two things have happened here, and we need to understand it. One, our currency. If we don't work, our currency is going to be weak. What I mean if we don't work, if we don't produce to sell outside, vis-a-vis the dollar or pound, we're going to have a weak currency. If you have a weak currency, you need more of your currency to buy one of something. Right. You look at the dollar, where it is today and where it was 14, 15 years ago. It's not the same. Why? Because our exports are dwindling, making our currency weaker, because we don't have, if you look at our balance of trade statistic, import minus export, we are on the negative side. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is corruption and infrastructure. Corruption adds a layer on the price. When you bring a container to the port, you will not only pay taxes, but you have to put money in people's pocket, from security to other kinds of people. And not only there, the checkpoints on the roads. So these all adds up to the prices, because no merchant, no importer is so they're God-fearing, but they're just not that nice to say, the additional cost I have incurred, I'm going to bear it on behalf of Gambians. No, they will pass on their last cost and put a factor, which is their margin, on top of it to sell. So what needs to change? Our port system needs a serious look, because the turnaround time at our port is not acceptable and is not in conformity with regional standards, the time it takes to clear a container. So the competitive nature of our country has been lost, and this affects our prices. So what you are seeing here today, let's say I'm a supermarket. I order a whole container of perishable items. What should have taken 4 weeks, I ended up getting it in 8 weeks. I have lost shelf life. So maybe I have lost 5 or 10% of my container just because of the time lapse. They will expire before I sell them. Right. So I factor that loss into the 80% that I'm going to sell. And when I factor it into the 80%, it becomes a price hike. And that price hike is due to inefficiency in the market. And the inefficiency is from corruption to bad infrastructure, i.e. port, and these checkpoints on the road, you name it. So the government need to take a critical look. If not, the life of the Gambian is going to be affected in terms of them having purchasing power. Today, none of us have purchasing power. You are poorer today than in 2016, and most likely you'll be poorer in 2022 than even 2021.
Right, and now finally, before I let you go, elections year. 2021, everyone is heading to the polls to decide if they want the status quo to remain, if they want it to change, or if we have, whatever it is. And now the IEC has come out to say that voter registration is going to begin very soon. What do you have to say to the Gambian people?
See, every people get the government they deserve. Politics in Gambia has become a game of prostitution. An educated politician without conviction and conscience is as good as an animal. We have seen the transfer window open, like players moving from one team to another in the Premier League and other leagues. That's what's happening in our political space, all for a pickup truck, little cash, and relevance. So, what the Gambian voter need to ask themselves, why did we put Yaya Jammeh out of office? Well, the first thing is we want to own ourselves. That's the first thing we will say. The second thing we will say is we want to strengthen our institutions. The third thing we'll say, we want to curb the excesses that happen in this country in terms of people maiming people physically and the financial and economic gangsters that looted this country. Now, if you put a stock take of all of this, did we achieve this under this administration? The answer is no. Since we didn't achieve them, is this government fit for purpose based on what Gambians wanted? The answer is no. Should we vote them back in office? Well, that's up to Gambians. But if we are worth our salt, we have dignity and pride in our citizenship, we will not allow any politician, be it the president or an aspiring politician, to take us for a ride. Gone should be those days. But Gambians in wara am fayda sen bopa, hamne nahate bi dafa passé suñ boti dañ ubeku. Why poverty has become an instrument of repression in our political space.
I want us to just press it there for a little bit. This is where the issue comes, because you will look at the policy of a political party and said, okay, this sits well with me and I am going to vote. But to that person out there who is hungry and just looking for a bag of rice, he doesn't care. He just wants a bag of rice and he will give you your vote.
But it's a shame that the politicians don't have the moral fortitude to stop using poverty as an instrument of repression. We saw that in Nyamina during the by-election. We have seen monies given to Gambia by the World Bank to help people who are on the fringes of poverty. And now these funds have been used to help people, but with a political cover. And that is a shame, and that is something that this government must stop, because this country is ours, and we should not prostitute our people, and we should not denigrate our people. These citizens find themselves to be unfortunate to be on the bottom totem pole of this country, but they should be made dignified people, and they deserve a dignified livelihood. And politics should not be repressive. When I say repressive, you should not induce people. A politician, worth his or her salt, must do something to uplift the lives of the people. And Joe Biden said one thing: do not get into public service to better yourself. You should get into public service to better your community and your country at large. Therefore, that means politicians must be selfless. But the crop of politicians we are seeing are selfish people who put self before the collective good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Njie, for coming through to the FATU Network News Review. That was a very interesting discussion. Thank you very much for coming.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go for a break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. And now the Gambia Transport Union recently concluded a nationwide tour, and now they've called a press conference to brief the media on their findings. Mati Senghor tells us more.
Transport Union, in a press briefing earlier today, showed reports after completing a nationwide tour. Recommendations were put up for the government to intervene.